What's up, everyone? This is Adam from Slurv, Ship My Money on DraftKings, and I'll be breaking down today's pitching slate for you for Tuesday, May 24th. As usual, I'm going to start with my cash plays on FanDuel and DraftKings, and then move into my GPP plays, and finish up with the pitchers that I want to target and use hitters against. Today's video will probably be a little bit shorter than usual, just because I'm a little bit behind in my research. Had a late night sweating the DraftKings live championship qualifier last night, so got a late start today. But for each site, there's three pitchers I'm looking at in cash. On DraftKings, it's David Price at 8,900, Jeff Samardzija at 11,700, and Steven Strasburg at 13,400. I'll start with Price. He's just like a free square on DraftKings today against the Rockies in Boston. I have no idea why he's priced at 8,900, and for cash games, I think you just have to lock him in today. One, because everyone else is going to, so you get the block, and also just because he's just priced too low in a really good matchup against the Rockies team that struggles on the road and struggles at times with lefties. So Price on DraftKings, I think, is a must-play in cash. And then Samardzija at 11,700. I don't love playing Samardzija in cash, especially when his price is elevated because he's facing the Padres. But he does have a pretty high floor, I think, against the Padres. So I think he's a reasonable play. I prefer Strasburg, though, paying the extra money and just taking him at 13,400. Samardzija's price is just high enough that I think I'd rather just pay all the way up to Strasburg. He's got a worse-looking matchup with the Mets, but he's just been great all year. He's got a 30% strikeout rate, and on top of that, going back to last season, he strikes out 30% of lefties that he faces. And the Mets, most of their good hitters are left-handed. Plus, they're without Duda. So, I think Strasburg is my favorite of the expensive pitchers today. And with a 14-game slate, I think there's going to be plenty of value hitters that you can get, so that you can pair Strasburg with Price and still, have some bats in decent spots. For FanDuel, the three cash pitchers I like are Strasburg, Price, and Justin Verlander at 8,500. Verlander just has a really good matchup with the Phillies. He's been much better in his last three starts. I think on DraftKings he's priced a little higher than I want in cash games, just because I'm not completely convinced that he's suddenly Justin Verlander again. But at 8,500 on FanDuel, if it helps you get in better bats, then I think it's worth the risk, against the Phillies team who has like a 77 WRC plus against right-handed pitching this season, and the game's in Detroit, so it's not the best hitter's park. So if you want to pay down at pitcher, I'm okay with Verlander at 8,500 on FanDuel, and then obviously I like Price and Strasburg in the same price range, separated by $100 for the same reasons that I like them on DraftKings. They're just both in really good matchups, and have high floors and high ceilings. I prefer Strasburg just because he's had the more consistent season, but I don't have a problem going with Price either. Moving into DraftKings GPPs, I like Strasburg at 13,400. I assume people will pay. Some people will go for Sale, which I think is a huge mistake, but he's the highest priced pitcher and he's only 400 more than Strasburg, and people just like to take the highest priced pitcher. So, he's definitely, Sale will have some ownership, which I think will help knock down Strasburg's a little bit. Plus, Strasburg just, has the scary-looking matchup with the Mets, so I don't think he'll be as highly owned as he should be. And I just think he's got really good upside, even at, the $13,400 price tag. Moving down, I do like Verlander in GPPs at 11,000 against the Phillies. I think that price is high enough that people probably won't really be too high on him, especially with David Price being, $2,100 cheaper. So I do like Verlander in GPPs. Price I like in GPPs also. He's going to be massively owned, so I think I'm leaning towards just having 100% of David Price, and then I'll have more than the field does. The thing is, it's a spot where I would love to fade it because he is going to be so highly owned, but in order to do that, you can't do it just to do it. You need to have someone around him that has a reasonable chance of beating him, in their matchup. And I've seen some people talking about Nate Carnes, but to me, he's not the pivot if you're not going to go with Price. Carnes has had good strikeout stuff this year, striking out 25% of batters he faces. But he's facing an A's team who only strikes out 18% of the time against right-handed pitching, And like some people point to what Taijuan Walker did last night, but Walker struck out 5 guys in the first 3 innings, and then the A's just started like slapping the ball everywhere and struck out once the rest of the game. So I'm leaning more toward just chalking up like a weird few innings in the first 3 innings for the A's than that, they suddenly strike out. And on top of that, Carnes a lot of times gets pulled from games with pitch counts in like the high 80s or like low 90s. So that's not the guy that I'm going to if I'm trying to pivot off of Price. Like I just don't think that they have ceilings in even like the same stratosphere. So that's not where I'm gonna go. I'm not saying that it's something I'm gonna do, but looking at those pitchers in the mid tier, if I try and pivot off of Price, it's going to be to Francisco Liriano at 8,500. He's a lot more inconsistent than Price. He's had some really bad starts this year, but he does have really good strikeout stuff. He's striking out 23% of guys he faces this season, and his swinging strike rate is 11.4%. Sorry, 11.4% this season. So, he's definitely got strikeout stuff. His issue is just if he has any command, which, is obviously a big risk. But if I'm going to fade Price, it's going to be with someone that can, beat him, because Price isn't in a matchup that scares me. I'm not fading Price thinking that, he's going to have a bad start. I'm fading Price just thinking I can get someone who's going to beat him by a few points. And to me, that is more likely to be Liriano than it is to be Nate Carnes. And then Matt Harvey's interesting to me on both sites. His price is all the way down to 7,500. He struggled a lot. He got hit hard by the Nats in his last start. But his velocity is down, but not down like a ton. I mean, he's still averaging 94 miles an hour on his fastball. His chase percentage on his fastball is still fine. His slider and changeup, it's actually higher this season. He's just throwing his fastball in the strike zone a little bit more, which I think is leading to, less strikeouts and more contact. If that's all it is, that's something that's pretty fixable. Just to not, throw, I guess not put it in the strike zone as much. I don't know. I don't think that that's all there is to it. Like I don't think he's suddenly a bad pitcher just because he's throwing like 3 or 4% more strikes with his fastball. But, just looking at the chase percentages on his other pitches, he looks okay as far as, guys aren't picking his stuff up well. So I think he will rebound, sooner rather than later. And at 7,500 in a tough matchup where he's probably not going to be very highly owned, that's not a bad spot to roll the dice on him. Moving over to FanDuel GPPs, I like Strasburg again, at 10,600. I like Price at 10,700, and it's kind of like for the opposite reason as DraftKings. DraftKings, he's priced way too low. FanDuel, he's priced at 10,700, which is $100 more than Strasburg and $100 less than Samardzija against the Padres. And so I think he's going to go kind of overlooked on FanDuel probably, just because, you can get Strasburg for the same price, who's just had a ridiculously good year, or you can pay an extra $100 and get a pitcher against the Padres, which everyone likes. And then on top of that, you have Chris Sale, a little bit more expensive, who's going to get some ownership. So I think Price's ownership will probably be lower than it should be in a really good matchup with the Rockies on FanDuel. That being said, if it sounds like people are going toward Price, then I do prefer Strasburg. And then I like Chris Tillman a lot in GPPs on FanDuel. He's still just, people aren't buying into him, but he's a completely different pitcher this year than he has been in the past. He's facing an Astros team that strikes out 25% of the time against right-handed pitching, and Tillman's striking out a lot of batters this year. Now that he's using his slider against righties, he's been a lot more effective against them. So he's someone that I just like a lot, especially if I can keep getting him at really low ownership every time he pitches. Same thing on Matt Harvey at 7,500 on FanDuel. Risky play, not at the top of my board, but he's an option to me. And then Verlander also I think is in play in GPPs at 8,500. His price is a lot better on FanDuel, but only needing one pitcher, his ownership still probably won't be that high just because, you have Strasburg, Price, Sale on the board. So I think his ownership will still be reasonable in a good matchup with the Phillies. Moving into offenses I want to target, I like the Tigers against Hellickson. He's got a 33.3% hard contact rate against right-handed pitching going back to last season with a 35% fly ball rate. The Tigers have a lot of, right-handed power, as they showed yesterday against Velasquez, and I think they can definitely have some success against Hellickson today. I like the Rangers against Chacin. Primarily they're lefties. Going back to last season, he's got a 40% hard contact rate against lefties. They're in a good ballpark for hitters in Texas, and it's a spot that I really like, especially after the Rangers let a lot of people down yesterday. I like the Dodgers against the rookie Daniel Wright. He had pretty good numbers in the minors, but to me, this is just a nice ownership spot. On a 14-game slate where the Dodgers have the late game, they're not going to be highly owned. And you get a spot where you're facing a guy making his major league debut, so who knows what he's going to do. But the Reds' bullpen is just so bad that, if he gets knocked out early, the Dodgers are just going to add on so many runs. And so that's a spot that I really like. The Red Sox, are obviously in play. I assume they'll be like the mega chalk today. They're projected to score 5.5 runs against Jorge De La Rosa coming off the DL. The one thing about this is if they really are going to be super chalky on a 14-game slate, I have no problem just kind of finding other spots because there's 14 games. And De La Rosa is not a horrible pitcher. He's not good, but he's not a lock to give up a ton of runs. So, I definitely like the Red Sox. And generally on these big slates, I don't worry too much about ownership because it's spread out. But, that is somewhere where if I think it's going to be too high for the Red Sox, I have no problem just going elsewhere. And if the Red Sox score 10 runs, then I come back tomorrow. DraftKings specific, I think if you're making multiple lineups, that there's definitely merit to having a Rockies stack. They have Story, Arenado, Reynolds batting 2, 3, 4, and then Rayburn batting 6. So they've got some right-handed power in there. And on DraftKings, Price is going to be so highly owned at 8,900 that I think you could definitely stack the Rockies in a good hitter's park. Given that Price has been really good ever since, his last 2 starts since he made his adjustment to his mechanics. But he still, has overall this season gotten hit hard. And given that everyone's going to be on Price and no one's going to be on the Rockies, I think it's a decent spot to just roll 1 or 2 Rockies lineups out there. And, if they go off, you're just in a really good spot. So that's what I'm thinking for right now. Stop into the Slurve chat, and I'll be in there throughout the day as I get more of my research done and start putting lineups together. Good luck tonight, guys.